was a dark and stormy night, nor'easter rolling in. It's a long 12 hours, the power's out again. I pray for inner strength and that we don't lose no lives. Just another day in the first responders' eyes. Half a cup of coffee's gone, the first run comes in. A car slid off the road, there's a family trapped within. My heart beats like a hammer, I can barely catch my breath. I'm thinking the worst and hoping for the best. Yeah, we ain't superheroes, we're just ordinary people trying to make a difference, and the first on every scene. It's a heavy, heavy burden to carry all this burden when you can't unsee the things you've seen. It keeps going on. When those sirens are gone. Now my shift is finally over, I gotta deal with what's mine and try to find a way to leave those tragedies behind. So I hug my 2 children, I kiss on my wife. Just another day, the first responder's life. Yeah, we ain't superheroes, we're just ordinary people trying to make a difference, and the first on every scene. It's a heavy, heavy burden to carry all this burden when you can't unsee the things you've seen. It keeps going on. When those sirens are gone. Flashing lights fill the air, broken bodies everywhere. Another bad dream is stealing my sleep. 'Cause we ain't superheroes, we're just ordinary people trying to make a difference, and the first on every scene. And it's a heavy, heavy burden to carry all this hurting when you can't unsee the things you've seen. It keeps going on. When those sirens are gone, it keeps going on. When those sirens are gone.
Welcome to the award-winning Mad Radio with John and Sam, your first responders network, folks. I got to start off tonight laughing because it has been an absolute madhouse as my internet totally crashes right before we're supposed to come on. So it's a miracle that we're here with you tonight. John is actually on a different location and will be back with us next week. He had some work stuff that he had to take care of. And so we wish him well. We wish him a safe shift tonight. And he is doing awesome. And speaking of doing awesome, the reason that John is doing awesome, well, one of the reasons is our guest tonight. And our guest tonight, he is one of my heroes because he brought my friend back. And yeah, it was rough without John. Sorry folks, I'm a little bit choked up as you know, John has been through a tremendous amount in a very short period of time. And Ben is one of the reasons, huge reason why John was able to make it back to us in one piece. Talking about brain wise, I'm just going to go right into it. Ben Pearson is a clinical director at Chateau Recovery, which is in Utah. Previously, Ben was a wilderness instructor, which we're going to get into. And for the past 16 years, he's enjoyed working with clients and families in conditions ranging from in-home consultations, outpatient offices, that cool wilderness treatment that we'll talk about, and adult residential treatment. He enjoys helping clients reconnect with personal values and moving beyond the labels of addiction. Teaching, empowering, and supporting courageous transformations every day are some of the many things that keep Ben excited about the work that is happening at Chateau Recovery. Ben, welcome to Mad Radio. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we've all had, those of us that are really close to John have had an opportunity to reconnect with him since returning to the Chateau, from the Chateau, and your name is in every single sentence that he uses. So I'm just going to say, from me, Sam, personally, thank you so much for all of your hard work and dedication to John, and from the entire Mad Radio family, all of our listeners that all over the world each week. From them, thank you so much. Between John and I sharing our personal stories for many, many years, you always think that we're always going to be the ones that are okay. I mean, that's just the way it is. When we do our workshops, we do the show every week. It's like we're okay. And we took our eye off the ball. Myself, our partners at A Badge of Honor, and we forgot about what it means to take care of ourselves. And I've been a huge proponent of self-care and a lot of things. I'm scrolling through my text that John sent me today because he's like, you have to make sure to ask Ben go over all of these topics tonight. And because the one thing that John said that he so appreciated was that you took the time to go really deep with him and you made sure that he understood the processes that you were working with him. So let's go. You didn't start at the Chateau. You're there now. Take us back. How did you get to be the clinical director at Chateau?
Great question. I'd have to comment probably on my childhood, like all of us, right? There's usually a story there for everyone of why they wanted to be there for somebody else. And your show, I'm sure, highlights that kind of stuff all the time. I guess I'd comment a little bit about my childhood. I grew up in South Dakota. Overall, came from a great family, had a good experience. I had a sibling, an older brother, that went through all sorts of different stuff. But growing up, I got my ass kicked. I struggled with learning disabilities, went through a lot of depression, considered suicide a lot during my high school years, and struggled in a few different ways. But I learned an important lesson as I watched my family go through my older brother's challenges. And as I watched my parents' tears and suffering, and that's what happens with any family that is dealing with any kind of addiction or mental health challenges. They're overwhelmed, they're not sure where to go. And being the little brother in that experience, watching someone else go through it, my parents, I told myself the best thing I can give my parents as a child is to lie to them and tell them that I don't have any problems, that I'm doing just fine, and that I will never let them down or never disappoint them, even though at no point they never really gave me that message of please don't tell us what's going on for you. That's never the message I got. But as a kid watching other people suffer in my family, I made that decision as a young man, thinking I need to shut it all down. I need to put on a good show, put up this mask, and tell people that I'm doing just fine. And that's my gift to my parents. So, as many men do, that's a promise that I tried to keep and put on that mask and tell everyone I'm just fine and I'm good, which is obviously a lie. It's obviously a huge problem walking into adulthood with that kind of mentality. And as I went through different kinds of challenges, I did what people do. You just keep it bottled up, tell them you're fine, tell them you're good, the usual routine. So I needed support. I needed lots of different things as a kid. And then later on, I got confronted with the reality, which happens. But if you don't deal with some of this stuff, it comes back to haunt you, and it shows up in other parts of your life. And so anyway, as an adult, I had a chance to go and be part of Wilderness and kind of be confronted with those kinds of issues. I had an opportunity to go and work with kids in Wilderness that were required to be there by their families. But in making that decision to go and work with children, actually my brother approached me and said, "Hey, I think you'd have an opportunity to hire you and to bring you on and work with kids." And I said, "Tell me about what the job would look like." And he said, "Well, it's outdoors, it's working with teenagers, and it's mental health stuff, and it's therapy and all that kind of stuff." And I said, "I can't stand teenagers. Mental health's a joke. I can't stand the woods. I don't know what you're thinking, because I am a horrible fit for all of these things." And then, to be honest, it was a spiritual decision to not trust my head, but to trust my heart. And I took a leap and decided to really kind of hitchhike to Arizona and work in a job where you are just living off of rattlesnakes and survival stuff and the bare minimum of food. And I fell in love with the process of helping people. So
Wow.
For me, that was part of how I connected with this kind of work. So I did that for about a decade. Went to school, obviously, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker. And then I was working in the woods with families and doing different things with teenagers. And then about 9 years ago, my father-in-law committed suicide through an overdose. And it was the first time we as a family kind of woke up to the reality of it's nice working with teenagers. It's nice helping people. But the reality is I got to work with the rich and famous and people that could afford, $50, $60, $70,000 for a couple of months to get their family support. And it's great care. But I knew the whole time that if I or my child ever had any kinds of challenges, there's no way I could afford that kind of support. Mm-hmm. So when my father-in-law had died, not only did we look at addiction very differently as a family, but what are the other families out there that are just average people that need great care and not a state-run program, not something that is archaic and challenging. And so I eventually left the Wilderness and connected with Danny Warner, the CEO and one of the owners of Chateau Recovery. And we connected right away through some common philosophy and said we want to do something very different. And we looked around for a while at all the different kinds of providers that are out there and decided we wanted to create something very unique that not only dealt with people's issues, but got away from some of the traditional labels around recovery and addiction, got away from this tunnel vision view that often happens when it comes to getting help, and decided to build a curriculum and a program that was unique and to help people that were motivated to really do something different in a very short amount of time.
You just said something very key, that people that are motivated in a very short amount of time. John and I have talked, over the years that we've known each other, and through that time, we always relayed the message that you getting better takes you putting in the work.
Right.
And it's not easy. Nobody will ever sugarcoat. Well, I should say nobody that's worth a darn in the therapy space will ever sugarcoat it, because we know we have that out there. Sure. But really, the buy-in has to be has to be with you. And if you have a client that doesn't buy in, what's the first thing we do? We try and trick you, right? So that's like the, and you'll call the bullshit right out there. And when I used to do personal training, I was like, hey, you came to me. We can either do this to get you to your goals and what you need, or there's the door. But because I can't make you do it. I'm not a drill sergeant. That's another show that John does. But, it's really being open and available to the process and understanding that the person that you're working with is going to give you the best of themselves. So in return, you must give them the best of you. And the best of you may look really crappy.
Right.
And I think that's where you talked about the facade that we put on, because I mean, you're working with first responders and addicts that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that have been in other treatment facilities before. Like, it's not their first rodeo by the time they land with you.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's the statistics are pretty alarming, actually. I think the national average, this might be an old statistic, but the national average was 7 different treatment episodes before someone sustains some of these changes. And most of the research, to be honest, is mostly about substance abuse. And as we talk about recovery and getting help, we try not to think about it from just a substance abuse perspective. Tons of people, especially first responders, don't get help because they look at the challenges in front of them and think, well, I don't have an addiction. I'm not the heroin addict in the gutter. So if I'm not that, I'm probably just fine. Because that's clearly a problem. Myself, I'm not in that kind of situation, so I really don't have that. So the challenge oftentimes is helping people see that, they're in a spot where they need some help. But also, again, so back to that idea of 7 different treatment episodes to get help. There's a lot of people who come in and there's a lot of external motivation pushing them to get support, but they don't feel that sense of ownership of, this is my treatment, this is my health, and this is my recovery. So one of the messages we try to send as often as we can is that recovery is not about substances. That's an old definition and assumption around recovery. We try and talk about recovery being, how do I get back to the best version of myself, or just recreate myself on some level? That's how we think about recovery. So it's not about abstinence of a certain substance. This is about my values. This is about my spirituality, but it's also about my family system, the way I deal with relationships, my mindset, my overall approach to life. That is our idea of what it means to get help and to get better.
And one of the great things that I love about Chateau is where you guys are located. I mean, first of all, when you said you're from South Dakota and you didn't do stuff in the woods, I was like, wait a second, that can't be. Don't all South Dakotans, you guys are big, rugged, North and South Dakota. You guys know how to get it done.
Sure.
But the way that Chateau is set up, it is in a very beautiful area in Utah. You have that nature/wilderness component added in to a therapy protocol, if you will. It was one of the things that was very impactful for John. I know for me personally, it is huge to be out in nature, connecting with something that is way bigger than yourself, puts everything that you're going through into perspective big time. And so, you show up at the Chateau, you're in an unknown environment, not only because you don't know what to expect as you walk through the door, but you don't know anybody there sometimes. And you may have kind of a negative view of what's going on. Now, John was lucky. He has a horde of people that were like, hey, this happened to you. And if you guys are just tuning in and you didn't hear John's story, shit went sideways. He ended up in jail. And then a group of us worked together to get him to the Chateau. So he didn't have a choice. we weren't giving him a choice.
Right.
We all saw the signs and symptoms. And partly on me and Jeff and John is like, okay, we need to face the facts that despite all the good work that we do, we need to pay attention to each other a little bit more. So here he is. He's walking into you guys. He is greeted warmly, graciously, just immediately has that, wow, I'm with people that get me. And so he said any sort of negativity that was going on, you all, and particularly you, flip that around. Can you talk a little bit about the way our mind processes things and how we can look at something negative that happened to us? And we'll just say, John's case and me, I was in 9/11 in Tower 1 and everything sucked, so how do you take the everything sucks negativity dealing with the first responder lifestyle and turn that into a positive?
That's a good one. That's a loaded question. Let me see if I can break it down. I think I want to respond a little bit to the idea of just showing up in just getting help in general. The idea of showing up and letting go of that kind of control and saying, I'm willing to be a student. I'm willing to be a follower with people who are used to being leaders and having a high amount of control and training and all that kind of stuff. It feels very counterintuitive to walk into a situation and say, I'll do whatever you say. It's not natural, especially for a lot of our responders. But I think the challenge is that we've got some pretty strong stigmas in our communities and overall culture that is people that are getting help are wrong. Oftentimes the stigma is criminalized. And then, so these are bad, struggling, asocial deviants that really need help. Again, just the people on the fringe of society are those who need the help. And so showing up in the program is something that people often connect with shame. And so I think the idea of walking in those doors and for someone to say, you're not that strange, you're one of us, and having a mindset that is, we're all in this together. That is a core part of our nature as humans, but also a piece of our philosophy as a program, is that you're not that strange. The reality is, if you look at you through a trauma perspective or from a couple different cultural perspectives, the reality is you're acting pretty normal with someone that's been given your circumstances. And you know what? Let's talk about carrying that load together, and let's start doing something different besides the shame and the fear and the isolation and some of the things that often happen to us when we're in survival mode. So right. I can't say enough about the humanization. I think that's a challenge. I think as we looked at programs that are out there, there is at times kind of an old school philosophy of we need to punish the problems out of people. We need to strong arm and just send this message of this is all in your head and let's just get over it, rub some dirt in it, as the joke goes. So we really try in the beginning to say, hey, this is about you. This is your baby. And I gave him this speech early on in the program that I give to everybody. I'm like, this is only going to work if this is yours. I know there's a lot of philosophies out there of other programs that are saying, trust us, do what we say, and this will work out great. And that's just not how we think about things. We're partners with you. We want to maybe be guides in a couple of ways, but overall, you're the expert about you. Tell us what you need. Tell us what you want. Tell us what's going on. And we're going to put some tools and ideas together with you. And then when you get discouraged or overwhelmed and whatever, we're going to help kind of nudge you along and help you take some leaps of faith to do something you haven't done before in order to get something you've never had. So part of it is being positive, but also recognizing that people in survival mode just need something different. So part of your question is how do we help people turn those kinds of things around? And I would say mindset is a huge portion of it. The mindset that you are not strange, you are not different, and that we are in this together. And that if I was given your circumstances and your challenges and all the things that have happened to you, I'd probably do something pretty similar. So if we can get past the idea that we're different, overall, we're going to make it to a very different kinds of conversation.
And that's key in bringing down the stigma, because
right.
you know, depending on the department, you know, there have been a lot of changes depending on the department that you work for. Some are very open, and it's like, hey, here is the treatment protocol. We want you to get help. We support you 100%. And your job is here when you get back. And it's ingrained into either the culture, which has changed, or it's even talked about at the training level. So before these officers exit the academy. So there's actually incentives. And I always say, you know, when we meet with the chiefs, is, don't you want the best performing department? And they always answer yes. And then taking from a Garland police officer who we work with, you know, the follow-up question is, great, what's your brain health budget? And they sit back and be like, what do you mean? Well, how are you going to have the best department if you don't have a brain health budget for when your officers, you know, either fall off the rails or completely go sideways? Possibility. If you don't have it, how are you going to have this? And that's when, you know, the gears start turning and they realize, oh, crap, we really don't have something. Or they say, hey, we've got millions of dollars in the budget, and we absolutely 100% want our folks to get well because we understand what the job can do over time, and we don't want them to feel like they're alone.
Right.
And one of another thing that John really says, I'm laughing because I'm looking at it right now. He sent me a picture of the whiteboard. Okay, so folks, you know, we have this stereotypical vision of what we think therapy looks like, especially for first responders. And it's, hey, here's my couch, and come on in and sit down, and let's kumbaya, let's talk, you know, yada, yada, yada. And it really has, first responder therapy protocols have changed over the years, and it really has become a very intensive, well thought out process that first responders respond to better if they understand everything that's going on up here, which is having them do the bizarre behaviors. And most of us are visual learners.
Right.
So I'm going to try, I'm going to try and put this up so the camera can see it. Okay, this is a picture that John said. Okay, this is from one of your sessions with John. He took a picture because it was so impactful. Talk about the whiteboard, man, because he was like, I love this whiteboard.
Yeah, the whiteboard. I get harassed constantly, and in a very loving way. I appreciate people put up with my attention deficit issues. But no, I do think it is visual. I think again, we're not given a lot of tools as in our families and our communities to how to talk about mental health stuff in general, right? If we point to a tree and say, build a chair, we can probably start to organize a plan and put some of these pieces together. But overall, when you tell someone, start to work on your depression, start to work on some trauma, or start to even just consider some of the baggage that came out of your childhood with you, those are all very abstract ideas, and it doesn't follow the same rule. So the idea of helping people slow down and to get organized and at least begin to understand that there's some concepts that you're going to have to sort through, some beliefs that you're going to have to identify and put them in a little box, and start to wrap your head around some of these concepts in a very different way. I've just have been that guy, but also have worked with, you know, a lot of people that are just overwhelmed by the idea of it, and they just kind of check out and give up and start to nod their heads and say whatever you say. And they're just, you know, they're unmotivated and just discouraged from the process, and so they've dropped out of treatment. It happens all the time. They're not sure where to start. They're not sure what to say. Men in general and first responders on top of that are just notorious for, I don't know what I'm feeling. I'm not sure how to feel. And then you want me to not only identify these concepts, but deliver them in a nice, coherent, organized way for a spouse or for my kid or any of that kind of stuff. that's just a very involved process that we're not given any kinds of tools in our culture to be ready for that kind of conversation. Not to mention the kind of shit that you got to deal with as a responder in a daily conversation. It's not easy, but doing that on top of death and fear and grief and shame and all these other things that have so much weight to them, we've got to slow down and we got to put better tools together. So as imperfect as my tools are, I try to use the whiteboard as much as we can to help kind of figure out how we go from 0 to 100 and recognize that there's lots of little cycles that we get into. There's lots of little ways that we go from a trigger or a negative cue or some kind of thing that happens to us in our world. And how does that fly through all these things? And next thing you know, I'm in an argument with my wife. Things have fallen apart. My kids don't know how to talk to me. I'm not sure what's going on. And having the ability and permission to slow down and say, let's look at those little micro steps. Let's talk about what the trigger was. Let's talk about the little thoughts that go along with it. But no one naturally has the tools to do that. And so having some time and opportunity to slow down with someone else is huge. And I'm a constant advocate for, we are not, when we're just in our head, we're usually doing damage. When we're in our head and we're just in this sea of kind of blurry objects of thoughts and feelings and memories and other kind of stuff, we end up overthinking, we become overwhelmed, and we kind of shut down and go back to survival mode. So if we can get it out in front of us, whether that's journaling, whether that's counseling, or whether that's talking to someone, the reality is we can probably get a little bit more objective about an idea once it's in front of us. But if it's just deep in our mind, the reality is we can't see it very accurately.
Wow, you hit on a whole bunch of things that were just like little pings for me. I remember going through my therapy from the minute that I walked in, sat down, and it was try to get present with your feelings and explain. And all I could say is, I can remember it clear as day. I don't know, but everything rhymes with cupped up. Okay. That was the only way I knew how to explain it. And I'm sure you've heard it before.
Yeah.
And that's because nothing made sense, because I didn't understand that this was so out of whack and signals crossed that I at the point that I got help, I couldn't make sense. I just knew that nothing that I did made sense.
Right. And
it affected every facet of my life. And there was a fear part of it too, where when you're asking people to get present and be aware, and John and I talk about this with Jeff and John in the workshop, the other John, we have two Johns, is that if you're missing that component of awareness, you cannot address the thing that is upsetting. They put the folks in the workshop put their own term as to what they are feeling about whatever it is. You can't move past it to the next thing if you've got this block that you cannot work through. And we are the first responder community. We are notorious for using our job, using the gym, using our favorite movies, whatever our vices are, alcohol, to distract us from getting aware and having the ability to notice. And I think on that whiteboard that you had, the mental mindset triangle, thought, mood, behavior model, you have to be able to process and be aware of what is going on inside to move forward in a positive manner that is not continuously in this harmful circle. And how do you break through? John, 30 years. I didn't have quite as much, but by the time I was on a couch, I had my walls. How do you break through first responders that all we know is the next call, the next distraction, and constantly utilizing distractions so that we just choose unconsciously to not be aware.
Right. That's a great question, and it's something we talk about in lots of different ways. I don't think we often realize how much we're in survival mode in general. First responders are not, right? The reality is that we live in a culture that says you probably shouldn't feel, right? I can't count how many responders I've worked with where their spouses feel and they see their spouse feel and they are freaked out by the idea that someone around them feels. And so we live in a culture where the message is if you feel too much, it's in the way, it's a problem. And so we've got billion-dollar industries all over our culture that is about making sure people don't feel much. So there's a lot of incentives out there. So going back a half step to what you're asking, when responders come in, or any of our clients come in, the reality is their guard is up, not intentionally, but because they want help. They're here because they've made a decision to say something, which is awesome. It takes a ton of courage. It's a very brave move, but at the same time, it feels very counterintuitive. So when they walk in those doors, again, they've already heard 1,000 stories of terrible therapists, lots of other kinds of things that did not go well in the world of soft, touchy-feely therapy bullshit, right?
Yep.
That's what we're up against in any scenario. But the other challenge is that the idea of being grounded and being present is something that is just very new. So people talk about getting help for their trauma, right? And as I watched your intro, the reality is there's constant exposure, multiple layers of trauma on top of any childhood stuff we have going on, just on the job stress and challenge, not to mention just some of the symptoms of PTSD where you're reliving past experiences. That the reality is that we are constantly in a high state of alert, and we're looking for our mental go bag of get the hell out of there and let's go on and be productive and do anything other than just be present. So when responders first come to the program, our job and kind of the unofficial start to getting trauma support is just getting grounded and feeling a sense of safety and connection. So the process, people often think that therapy, being in a therapist's office or doing EMDR work or some other kind of trauma related intervention is the work of doing trauma. And the reality is it starts way before that. Helping people slow down, get grounded in the present moment, whether that's through mindfulness or different kind of mindset work. There's a variety of things people do to do that, but you cannot be insightful. You cannot break habits. You cannot change behavior until you connect with the present. And that doesn't always mean hot yoga or some meditative process. It can be that for some people. But the reality is you have to decide to sit in a place where there's emotion and there's reality and there's noise and there's confusion. And that takes a lot of safety for people to get there. So our challenge is to not only humanize people, but also help them feel safe and recognize that this is not wrong. It's just new.
So you threw a lot out there with the
Yeah.
yoga and the EMDR and everything. So the beautiful thing about Chateau is you're not one size fits all.
Right.
We have heard, story after story, the more years that we're doing this about how, you have this trauma, you need this therapy. This
Right.
happened to you. Oh yeah, go there. The Chateau approaches things from the whole person standpoint, and what works for me as a former female, former cop, female mom, etc., may not work for a guy.
Sure.
In the same line of work. So we may come from the same squad, the same line of work, and
Right.
we are taking two completely different paths. Explain how you guys really allow people to explore at Chateau with your different programs within the therapy?
No, I think this idea of we're all the same, the one size fits all, that is still the predominant kind of approach out there in terms of programs. A lot of programs are saying, oh, this is what you need. So we've got a formula. We're going to plug you into the formula. You don't know what you need. We know what you need. You have this symptom or you have this diagnosis. Great. We'll take it from here. We don't need you anymore. You just need to hand over all of this decision making to us because you're sick. You don't know how to do things. And that's not a very empowering message, first of all. So our job is to basically help them understand that you've got to be a partner with us. And the good news is that we're gonna introduce you to some ideas. We want to know what your values are, where you want to be, who you want to be, and where you'd like to end up. And that is what we're devoted to. So sure, we're going to introduce you as a program. We're going to introduce you to different kinds of concepts about how to get grounded, whether it's just how you take care of your body, how your nutrition works, what kind of medication you're on, what kind of medication actually works for you. Let's talk about breath work. Let's talk about some of the mindfulness and some of the meditation stuff. That's no doubt a piece of the program, but we don't assume that because we told you to do it, you're going to do it from this point forward. Our challenge is to put a number of different ideas in front of you, challenge you to try it, give it a real shot, connect with a couple of concepts. And again, I can't count how many guys who have said, I'm never going to be a yoga guy, so you guys can just get over it right now. You know, as respectfully as I can be, you can just shove this yoga shit. I'm not buying it. And I can't count how many guys who are saying, I can't believe I feel this way. I can't believe I think this way. I thought forever that this mindful stuff, my brain just does not work with mindful stuff. And, you know, the reality is that you haven't found your way to do the mindful stuff yet. But the reality is it does work. You can slow down. You can find a simple breath. You can find some of these simple tools that in any place you can go from a 9 or a 10 off the charts, super escalated and just discouraged and overwhelmed, to finding some simple ways to slow down, get grounded, and get back to a spot where you can be the kind of dad, husband, wife that you need to be. And it's not about therapy. So the process for us is kind of slowing people down and saying, you know what, there's a lot to you. Within you, part of our model is there's a whole system inside of you. And we're all very unique people, but the reality is there's mental health things that are very unique about you that are not like the guy next to you. You know, your spirituality, the way your body works, the way you metabolize things, the way you've dealt with different kinds of memories. There's lots of those things that are just very unique, but also your family system, the way your relationships work, the way you, the kind of skills you have and just doing adulting in general. There's just lots of these little dimensions that let's just slow down and help you see how well you're doing in some of these areas. And let's help you get better at just reading your own personal health in some of these categories so that you can put together a plan and some interventions that you like, that are good for you. And we're not saying go and check in with a therapist all day, every day and talk about feelings. But if you come home from work and you've had a rough call or two, the reality is you need to find a system that fits for you, that allows you to decompress so that you can show up for your wife and kids. And even better, is there a way you can figure out what your system is so you can teach it to them so they know how to navigate you and not just be left guessing?
Yeah, that's great. So in the beginning, you said, you know, you do this in a compressed time frame. It sounds like you've got an incredible assessment tool, if you will, to cover all of this in a very methodical and rather quick fashion, so that if you go to the Chateau, you come out with all of the tools that you need that work for you.
Right. Yeah, that's the going back to this idea of I've worked with the rich and famous, and you know, it's not that big of a deal to extend your time in treatment, right? You just pay someone another 30, 40 grand and you just have more time. Public servants, other normal people just don't have an endless amount of time. The fact that we work with insurance and we can get some support for average families to actually get in there. the reality is, though, you're racing the clock, and that's true for just any kind of change. The reality is that the biggest factors in change in getting help is time and repetition. It's not about therapy. It's how much time how much time and repetition I have with new skills and new ideas, and just practice them until they become part of how I work. Because when times get tough, we go back to what we believe in, to what we trust. And if you only practice a couple of tools for a couple of days in some program in Utah, the reality is it might feel great and you might function really well within a program, but going back home, you've got to trust this stuff. So we need to have as many touches on that particular tool as we can to really be competent and to trust those particular ideas. So in terms of the assessment stuff, we are medically jumping right in, saying, hey, let's get really clear. We have different kinds of genetic testing that helps us understand what kind of medication works and does not work for you. When it comes to the mental health side of things, we've got a pretty robust assessment that is pretty different. Most people, they show up to therapy, and I've experienced it in outpatient private practice work, where some people, I'll meet with them for 6-8 months before I really have a solid idea of what happened to them when they were younger, and realizing what kind of patterns have been going on their whole lives. But we don't have 6 or 9 months to slowly hear the story and go through the narrative. And again, I think there's a lot of responders, but people in general typically bail on treatment because it's expensive, it's inconvenient, it's overwhelming, it's discouraging, and they just don't think they're going to do very well. So we put together a tool that in about 30, 40 minutes can identify, here's some of the hot spots in your younger years. Here's some issues and patterns that have been developing for some time. And the reality is, before you ever became an adult, you had some pretty dark opinions and beliefs. And there's some skills and tools that you didn't have, or some bad habits that kicked in when you were very young. And that's part of why you're finding yourself in the spot where you're at as an adult. So if we can get those kinds of tools in front of families and clients that come to the program, at least we get to say, in a short amount of time, where do you want to start? This is not going to change overnight, but at least here's some things that are going on that we can point to and say, these areas need to be dealt with. And it's pretty empowering as a client to say, I get to decide where I get to start. I'm not going to jump straight to the deep, dark stuff from a lifetime ago, but I will start with this kind of stuff, and I'll look at the bigger picture, and I can start to identify these kinds of themes. So it's important for us to say, let's get a blueprint together of what you need to be working on. Sure, a part of it gets started while you're here in the program, but the reality is change takes time, and let's put together a plan that you can go back home, find someone you trust, teach your family about what this blueprint looks like, and let's get you on that road and help you build something that you actually believe in.
Well, you mentioned families in there, and then transitioning, from the chateau back home, and
Sure.
the things that you bring with you and what you need to do, the things that bring you down from, when you realize you're really stressed, to a more calm space. Is there a component that you work with the family before the first responder does return home?
So we've got a curriculum. All of our families that come in, if the client allows, the client has a lot of say in how this works, but we've got a curriculum that from week one, we introduce ourselves to the family and say, let's get started. We've got a questionnaire that says, where are you at? What do you need? And what is it your loved one needs? And so we start that conversation pretty quickly. And every week we send out information, whether it's book recommendations, videos, articles for them to read, and the constant encouragement of, hey, family, how do you get the support that you really need? Whether that means some therapy. We've had a number of spouses that get into some kind of therapy, whether that's a support group or some other form of support, or just changing the way their self-care works. So we try and encourage them. I do our family program once a month. We have a Zoom call, and we kind of walk through what the what the Chateau's curriculum is, But also just say, families, you guys have been through a ton. You might be hurting as much, if not more, than your loved ones. And the reality is that whatever is going on for them is probably in some level going on for you as well. So let's not just have this process be dedicated to how do we help people, your loved one, get all the help, but let's make sure that in the metaphor of the airlines, let's make sure you get your oxygen mask on first so that you can be that kind of support. And that's a different concept for some families. For us to say, no, taking care of you while they're gone, whether that means spa days or whether it means reading different kinds of books, let's get some tools in your hand about a different mindset. Or let's talk about some of the Chateau skills, and let's teach them to you a little bit so there can be some common language before your loved one comes home. Right. So that's a tough process, and oftentimes it's never enough. But we do want to be very explicit with the family, saying, you need help, you deserve help, you've been through a lot. Oftentimes you've been doing it in the dark and you don't really know what's going on with your loved one. So let's figure out how we can slow this down and give you a hand.
Wow, that's really powerful, because we continue to hear it's like, hey, this is great for the first responder getting somewhere, getting some really intensive treatment and coming out and then returning to a space that's not understood, that's not supportive, and not having a lot of good questions being asked. And so that's fantastic. And along those same lines, when you mentioned self-care and giving the family members, you're doing this day in, day out with this community, first responders and more. How do you do your self-care? I mean, you, from the beginning of this show tonight, you explained where you came from. I would imagine, as I've experienced, as John has experienced, as Jeff has experienced, that we have been able to use a badge of honor, what we do, our workshops, as a cathartic experience, a chance to share, to continue our wellness trajectory, if you will. So all the work that you did with the kids, the teenagers in the wilderness, had to ping and bring stuff up for you.
Sure.
How have you managed being in the down and dirty for so many years to really create an atmosphere for you? Because the reality is that you guys on the front lines helping us, you got to take care of yourselves too.
Right. It's a great question. I wish I was the poster child of self-care. I'd like to lie to you, but I'm trying not to. The reality is it's constantly an evolving process. I don't think it's easy work to do. There's never enough time. There's never enough money. There's never enough, fill in the blank. It's never that way. I'm inspired by the work that we get to witness. Sure, as we're in sessions talking about burning babies and all these horrific scenes that people go through and they need to talk about in therapy to just, again, kind of unload and to just get rid of. I'm inspired by bravery. So I think I feel very lucky to be in a place where I get to witness courageous, challenging situations and people stepping up to those kinds of challenges and letting out secrets they've had since they were a little kid and realizing that nothing bad happened. Like, no one shamed me, no one condemned me, no one pointed fingers and laughed at me. So I love being in individual sessions and group sessions where just cool things, I get to watch it. So that's inspiring. Obviously, I go to my own personal therapy. Some of my clients do not believe that I go to therapy. They think that I have answers, which is sometimes true. But the reality is, I've got to go get help. I'm part of a men's group that gets together. If you can imagine what it's like to hanging out with, 9 or 10 other therapists doing therapy on each other, it's a bit of a show.
No, I am sorry.
It's
I can't
it's
imagine.
it's a wild little thing. But no, I think, and there's the other stuff of just connecting with my kids. But part of what I really like about our philosophy that does constantly energize me is I'll put a small plug in for the Arbinger Institute. So the Arbinger Institute wrote a few different books that I'll throw out there. One is called The Anatomy of Peace, and the other one is called Leadership and Self-Deception. And at the core of that philosophy is the reality that we have a choice of how we see people. We can see them as people who are just as weird and anxious and awkward as us, and they deserve love and respect and empathy and all that kind of stuff. Or we can see people as objects, just things in our way. When we get stuck in survival mode, we just see people as objects. When we get stuck in our ego and we don't take care of ourselves and we're overwhelmed and discouraged, we just see people as objects. And we use them, we lie to them, we try to manipulate them, we do all those kinds of things. And when you see people that way, you get burned out even faster. You get rigid. That dark humor gets extra dark and extra crispy. And there's something that happens to our soul, in my opinion, when we stay stuck in that very inward way of thinking that it's all about me and that everyone else is just simply in the way. So part of our philosophy is about getting out of that hyper-personalized, selfish perspective that we just accidentally get into, in my opinion.
Yeah. You said, so the first book was The Anatomy of Peace, and what was the second one?
Leadership and Self-Deception.
Oh, I like that.
There's more out there, but yeah, we could geek out forever on some of those kinds of concepts. But
well, that's kind of like my kind of reading. I know I drive John crazy. He's like, "What'd you read this week?"
Oh yeah, I'm reading your book, by the way, just so you know. And it's
thank you, thank you so much. It is trauma and post-traumatic growth and overcoming and keeping a positive mental attitude. It is a lifelong journey. Yep. It is not, that's why I love that John is doing the things that he's doing every single day, that he learned from y'all, and it has put him on a much better path of awareness instead of just going through the motions.
Right.
And he is more calm, much better focused. And I mean, I really notice a difference. He tends to now pause more before like getting the thought out. I mean, being from Brooklyn and from Long Island, rather. Oh, I think I just committed a faux pas, a major crime by mixing up Brooklyn and Long Island there. Sorry, folks. But yeah, he no longer feels like he is being run by life, that he gets to make the choices and to run and build the life that he wants. And that's where we talk about where the peace comes in. PEACE, not PIECE,
right.
And in life and enjoying the journey of however much time we get on this spinning orb. Right. I'm looking at the time right now. What's something that you want first responders to know? If you could give them a message, what would that be?
Great question. It would probably be to take the chance. I think we've got a lot of we get so stuck in our own heads that we're alone and that people won't understand and that no one's like us. I'm too far gone. There's some really dark assumptions that are out there, and the reality is, again, back to what inspires me. I see people who show up in the program who are skeptical as hell. And they don't know if anyone will ever understand them. And they take a small risk and they speak up, and it doesn't always go perfectly, but they are seen and they're heard, and it's not as bad as they thought it would be. So I love that. So that doesn't mean that everyone needs therapy. It
Right.
does mean if you find someone you trust, please speak up. You know, whether it's just I'm having a rough day, or you know what, I can't seem to get past this last call, or I don't know how to talk to my spouse. We've all got stuff that's going on, and we spend way too much time isolating, struggling on our own. We just need to speak up and take some of those small risks. It does take courage, but I'm always amazed that I work with people who do these amazing things. It takes huge amounts of courage that they don't think twice about. But the idea of saying to a buddy of theirs of like, I'm pretty unhappy. I'm not doing well as a father or as a mother, and I'm not thrilled with the way I'm doing life. When they speak up and decide to just take that small risk, most of the time that's rewarded. Once in a while, we pick the wrong person that just can't handle it that day. But that's what I would say is take the small risk and start the process of getting a little bit of support. It'll go better.
I love that. Love that. Take the chance. Got it in the show notes here. Hey guys, Ben from Chateau Recovery has been our guest this hour. Across the bottom of the screen, the whole show is how you can get in touch with the Chateau. Top-notch program. Again, these guys totally get the concept of not one size fits all. Okay. They are going to take care of you from the minute you walk in to the minute that you leave. And you will never be alone in this process. And that's awesome, because to be able to take the chance, say, hey, I need some help, and then to never walk the journey alone again. That's the greatest of rewards. Ben, I can't thank you enough for your time tonight. And again, from Sam, thank you for returning my friend to me. Just he's doing so great.
Awesome.
I really thank you so much. You guys are my heroes out there. And yeah. So we're gonna just put you back in the green room, and I'll be back with you just in one second here. So folks, again, a huge thank you to Ben for taking the time. Eye-opening show tonight. The help is out there for all the first responders listening. All you have to do is go to chateaurecovery.com. It's scrolling on the bottom of the screen. Or you can go to abadgeofhonor.com, scroll down to our resources. Chateau's logo is there along with our other partners. Click on it. Boom. You're right there to the website. Take a chance. You will come out better for it, because it's okay not to be okay. We just don't want you to stay there. And again, you will never ever be alone in this process, and you're not alone starting the process, because so many people are in your shoes and have so much stuff going on that is just like yours, that is maybe less than yours, or maybe like a crap ton more than yours. So that should be some relief. But know that you're not alone out there, and there are resources. Hey, if you want to support Mad Radio, because we cannot do this without you. If you're watching on Facebook, jump on over to our YouTube channel. You just go to youtube.com, and in the search bar, put Mad Radio Texas. We'll pop up, hit the subscribe button. We get to do awesome extra stuff when we reach a certain amount of subscribers. So go ahead and do that. If you're watching us on YouTube, thank you. Jump on over to our Facebook pages where the show is being streamed live. Facebook.com/makingadiffrencetx or Facebook.com A Badge of Honor. So it's being streamed live stream there as well. And if you are looking to merely support the show monetarily. Every penny counts, penny, so we can keep bringing this awesome material to you. Visit abadgeofhonor.com. You can click on Mad Radio. We've got a donate button right there. And if you're looking for the most unique way to support the show, visit carryintexas.com. Now is the time, folks. There are crazy things going on out there. Protect yourself, protect your family, get your Texas license to carry. I am your instructor, take you through the entire process, carryintexas.com. So from me, from John, thank you so much. And to all of our first responders out there, to everybody in uniform on the home front and abroad, we think about you every day. We pray for you. Just remember, you are not alone. Until next week, guys, please stay safe.